Brad, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate you joining me. I'm looking forward to letting people kind of know your experience and stuff. Would you do me a favor and just introduce yourself? Give us an idea of who you are. Who is Brad really? You know, but just really who you are, what you do, man. And let's just go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Brad Leon. I'm an educator. That's my job. When I met you, Adam, the first time, I was working for the Memphis school system in Shelby County, and then moved to Chattanooga to start a program called Blue Sky, which is an educational program that takes students through 27 months of college where they get a full bachelor's degree in 27 months, and then they get a guaranteed job on the IT team at Blue Cross. So that's what I've been doing the last 4 years, but also a dad of two boys, 13 and 8. Very happily married, and I spend a lot of time as a youth coach, football and baseball in particular. And like you, man, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for it's a little more than 8 years now, and still love it, and still trying to make it in at least 4 times a week. That's a little bit about me and what I'm about, and you and I have worked together for quite some time now. So yeah, I owe you a ton, man.
Well, thanks for that. But you and I, what's funny is when we met in jiu-jitsu, we met in Memphis, which I'm in Utah now. You're in Chattanooga, so it's interesting that we're all going different directions, but we're still together somehow,
Yeah.
So when we met, I remember rolling with you the first time, and I was like, man, that guy is really tough. Like, because you had like this iron grip, and you were just like so determined to defeat your enemies. You know what I mean, dude? I was like, that guy is really tough. But then you'd be like the nicest person afterwards, which is what I love about jujitsu, because you can really just bang heads with people, and then you can like go hang out, and people are totally cool, unless there's that one guy, and then we all destroy him, and then he leaves.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm glad you thought that, because I don't think I ever got the better of you. So I'm glad you at least thought I was
Not at the
tough.
beginning. Not at the beginning. Not at the beginning, But I was in it a little bit longer than you. So what belt are you now?
I'm a purple belt, 4 stripes, and I've been there for a while. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future.
I would imagine you'd be up for brown by now. I mean, is your school a little slower?
I've had a few people say something about that, but I mean, everybody's got an ego, so that kind of recognition is great. But I really do it, and I'm sure the same is true for you. Like, the community was really turned out to be the primary thing. When Blake, I know who's your main instructor, when he said welcome to the team, there was a feeling that came over my entire spirit that I didn't anticipate, because I hadn't been a part of a team since I was in college. And feeling like I was a part of something is like the main reason that I do it, and I try and keep my focus on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I'll be honest with you, dude, like, when you get those upper belts, brown, black, nothing changes except how hard people go with you. Yeah. That's it. Like, nothing changes. So my favorite time was purple belt, because I felt like people expected a little bit out of me, but not too much. You know what I mean? So you could get the better of people, but nobody would be upset about it. And you know what I mean? Like, I enjoyed that a lot. Purple belt was my favorite because it happened during COVID, and me and Ryan Ruhlman would sneak into the back of the gym and just roll together when nobody could exercise. We would go and like just beat the crap out of each other for like 2 or 3 hours. So that was like my favorite time in purple belt. But
that's awesome.
I love jiu-jitsu.
I lost about a year of training during COVID. I mean, because we made the transition, but my wife, unfortunately, her mom was going through stage 4 cancer at the time, and has since passed. And we were trying to lock down just to be super safe with her. So yeah, like a year of training kind of, gone. But I tried to get as much work with my dummy as I could. I have like a 90-pound dummy downstairs.
Yeah. So, and you have teenage boys. So you can just foot lock them, rear naked choke them. I foot lock my daughter all the time when she's watching TV. I just practice, breaking her ankles, and she's like, "Stop, seriously,"
But
my
anyway, 13-year-old's a wrestler, so like I feel like my time doing that to him is limited, because he's getting to the point where he could probably kill me.
That's awesome. It's so fun. Well, look, man, let's talk real quick. So you and I work together. You like we've been friends for years now, and you knew that I coached people, and you knew that you know we were doing jujitsu together. I kind of, in my opinion, I felt like I kind of lived the life in front of people to the best of my ability. So you came to me probably a little like about a year and a half ago, almost,
Yeah.
and you were like, hey, I need a coach. So can you kind of tell me what pushed you towards getting a coach? Because I find some people are real reluctant to do that. One, price, because to have a professional does cost. But some people just have this barrier with asking for help in certain areas. So can you just kind of tell me what drove you to that?
Yeah, I mean, and you may recall this, but I had a pretty significant health scare
Mm-hmm.
prior to my reaching out to work with you. It turned out not to be as serious as was initially thought, but I went to see a cardiologist, had an incredibly low ejection fraction, which is essentially the heart's blood pump function. And what he said to me was like, "Hey, man, this is incredibly serious. You might not live for 5 years."
Yeah.
And I looked, did a lot of research on it, and I was pretty freaked out. It turned out this particular cardiologist wasn't very emotionally intelligent, and also honestly not really knowledgeable, because one thing that was constantly a puzzle to me was like, when I read about people with a low ejection fraction, they can barely make it up the stairs, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
working out daily doing jujitsu, 4 to 6 times a week, like, and I wasn't having any problem. So when I hit a new cardiologist, she basically said, "Look, all of those studies are based on people who are symptomatic. You're not symptomatic at all. So we actually know nothing about people like you," which made sense. But
Uh,
when you get news like that, and I don't know if you or anybody who might be listening has heard something like that, you go into sort of a different world. Like, the world immediately changes.
mm-hmm.
And for me, it really inspired me to read Peter Attia's book. And one of the primary things that he talks about is being stronger as highly correlated to longevity. And like a lot of people, I wanted to be around for my wife, for my boys. And I knew I had limitations in terms of nutrition, in terms of working out to be effective and optimal. I was already using your app, so I was
Mm-hmm.
already following along with that program. But I just thought that it was really time for me to get with a real professional who knew what they were
Mm-hmm.
doing, both from a nutrition standpoint and from a working out standpoint, to really up my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I was highly motivated to do that, because
Yeah.
when
Well,
you get news like that,
yeah. The
um,
the
you know,
doctor hit you with a ton of bricks, dude.
yeah, and again, it turned out not to be quite that serious, but it put me in a much more serious mind frame about my own, health and longevity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting too. And I find that it does take sometimes like kind of this switch or this maybe the shadow of something that could be wrong to really motivate people. So a lot of times when I'm sharing with people or I try to encourage people, I'm trying to say, hey, don't get to the place where you have to have a scare to do it, right? So you need
Right,
to start changing before you have to,
right.
But with you, I think it's interesting too that you were even. I remember being on the phone with you. I was sitting in the Chipotle parking lot. I remember, right? Because I was about to go in and crush some Chipotle,
Nice.
double steak always.
Always.
So, but I remember thinking, man, I mean, Brad's really fit for like a low ejection fraction to be an issue, right? I mean, and that's probably like a congenital thing too. It's probably not like you just developed it because got exposed to something or whatever. So I
Right.
was thinking, I mean, he's never like had trouble breathing when I was doing jujitsu with like, so I was really kind of like weirded out by that, but I was like, well, if we're going to get stronger, we're going to get stronger. So let's just
Yeah.
freaking go. So tell me, I remember when you came to me. So you came to me at about 185 pounds, and you're what, 6 foot, 6 foot one?
6'1", yeah.
Okay, you're 6 foot one. So you and I are roughly the same size. But when you came to me, and I'm going to show we'll put up some of Brad's before and afters. You were a fit dad, and then by the time we were done, you were like an absolute unit. You know what I mean? Like you really were, dude. I was like, Brad, I even said, it's like his head's got more muscles. Like seriously, like your neck was thicker, everything. So I remember what we did with you was we just started taking you through just real progressive basic strength training that was customized for your house because you had a home gym.
Yeah.
And one of the things we were trying to balance was we were trying to balance the fact that you were going to do jujitsu still quite a bit, right? So we had to pack in a lot of stimulus from the muscle side in just a couple of days, just a few days, right? Because I think at the most we were working out like 4 days a week, and you were doing jujitsu at like 4 to 5 times a week. So, how did you find the workouts? Did you find them challenge? Like, just give me some of your experience with, the approach we took.
Yeah. I think the first thing that comes to mind, actually, the workouts weren't the first thing that came to mind. It was the nutrition side.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think prior to working with you, I was eating, I don't know, 2,200 calories a day.
Yeah, you were eating like diet food, dude.
Well, not knowing, like having no frame of reference for like how many calories I should be eating, how many grams of protein. And so I think I don't know exactly what you said, but the impression I got was you're basically starving yourself. Like you're starving yourself and trying to be incredibly active in your body. Like, I mean, your body's using its resources just to like hang on instead of thriving. And so the first thing I remember us doing was consuming, I don't know, somewhere close to 3,000 calories a day for a long time. And I saw no weight gain for like the first 3 or 4 weeks, which I just thought was witchcraft, man. I was like, how is it possible that like I'm not putting on any weight and I've been eating far, far more calories? So that was my first impression, was just like, I wasn't doing nutrition in the right way to maximize what my goals were. So the workouts were awesome. And, I do have a lot of friends who ask me about, fitness, especially now after having worked with you, because if people notice there's a bit of a bodily change. And they ask about discipline, and the workout part has never required any discipline for me. Like I'm just very lucky that way. I enjoy it. I look forward to doing that. Those are the things that I really want to do when I first wake up in the morning. But the nutrition part is a lot trickier for me. And I'm
for everybody.
It's still figuring out my way, but that does require quite a bit of discipline. But the workouts were great. I mean, I think we had a loading phase where we were really focused on, building core muscles, started to do lifts at a weight that I hadn't done in quite some time, and found that I really enjoyed it because I was doing much lighter weights, much higher repetitions. And I think we even got into rep ranges around 3 to 5 for certain lifts. And I just enjoyed that a ton. And so, my experience both at the beginning and through our time together was just uniformly positive. Like, taught me about nutrition. The workouts were really fun, and I got a lot stronger and bigger.
You did.
Put on 25 pounds, and I don't, it wasn't fat. I mean, it was like, maybe it was some fat, but muscle.
There's a little bit there, but you had abs the entire time, right? You never did not have abs, which is another, feels like voodoo. Right. So, but I remember what you were doing was, and you were making a very common mistake, and it's not even it's a lack of information is what it is.
Yeah.
So what happens is you take people like yourself who are very disciplined, and you hear you're not supposed to eat all the time or eat a lot. Right. But that never matches the context. You're 6 foot tall, you're doing jujitsu at least 4 times a week, and you're lifting weights at least 4 times a week. So you're like doing almost double to triple the work that the average person is doing. And you're just kind of eating moderately. So what was actually happening in that situation is that because the output is so high and the resources are so low, right? Your body, basically all of your calories are going just to recovery, like just to get you back up for the next workout. So there's no growth. There's no, because in order to put on mass, there has to be material, right? So there has, in order to create more muscle, there has to be enough leftover material to build, right? So you were literally just feeding yourself enough to make it to the next workout, and you were doing fine with that. And you had a physique that I think most dads would want. You were lean, tall, athletic. But then I just was like, no, we're not eating like a teenage girl anymore, and we we pushed up your calories. I think the highest we got to was like 3,200. At one point, we got about there, and immediately, what happened? I remember is that your performance went up like immediately. Your weight didn't move at all for like 2 or 3 weeks, and that's where the magic came in because your body was like, "Oh, thank God." Right? It's just like devour, 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 right? And then at one point, we went through a couple of phases too, right? We went through getting, accustomed to some volume, and then we got stronger, like in basically the deadlift, the squat, and the bench press. And I think your bench press went up from like 185 pounds to like, I think your projected 1 rep max was like 275 at one point, like projected 1 rep max, so approximated. So you went from pretty strong to like above average strong. So, and I think the big thing what we did there was that one, I pulled the lever of your need for consistency, right? Like you are consistent. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna keep throwing these exercises, the same exercises at you. And you just kept growing. Cause I think, did you ever get bored? You ever get bored with training?
No. And again, I think where some luck comes in because, I don't get bored with training, doing the same exercises. I don't get bored with eating the same things on a day-to-day basis. I will say, just so that, you or others don't think I'm a robot, like I found that I do need a cheat day where I just like don't track anything and I just, I go ham. Because
when you say ham, give me an idea of ham.
Well, today's my cheat day, and I had like a big old slice of caramel cake for lunch. I had some whey protein, so I try to keep the protein consistent. I'll have like a double venison burger at night for dinner. But I generally just like turn off all of the tracking. Like I still, lifted this morning. I still did jiu-jitsu, but I'm not like as conscious of like, hey, I need to get into this range for protein, this range for carbs. I usually refrain mostly from sugar, and on Fridays I'm just like whatever.
Sure.
And I found that was if I didn't have that cheat day for some reason, I would cheat a little bit every day, and
interesting.
And I would actually end up in a worse spot.
Yeah, because the cumulative effect of
and so I
every day
I made a deal with myself. Like if I can hold the line, during this period of time, then on Friday I can just do whatever I want. And in the past, like that actually did not work for me. And there's some days where I'm like, should I do a cheat day? But it's been working for the last year or so. So I'm sticking with it for now. We'll see.
That's good. Well, and I think part of this is part of what happened with some of this, and you have stepped away from working with me now because you feel like I asked you and you said, no, dude, I feel like I can just handle it now. Like I can learn enough. So a big part of this was you learning what works well for you. Right. So like I can't do like a one cheat day, like a week, because I will like think about it and like obsess about it and be like, dude, I'm going to eat a whole pizza, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? I like start building it up in my mind. So I can do like a little bit, every couple of days. I'll do a little bit every couple of days. I'll have a burger and some fries. I'll have, my daughter likes to bake. So she made lemon loaf the other day, and, she cuts it in slices, and I'm like, it's a loaf. You're supposed to eat it like a loaf. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm eating like 2-3 pieces, but I find for me that I can keep the pressure, the cap on it, as long as I just touch it every once in a while. But dude, if I take the cap off, I'm like, I'll go to Five Guys and eat a large fry by myself. You know what I mean? Like that's like 1,500 calories, dude, in one sitting.
I think you made a good point, which is everyone is different in this regard. Or I found that they're different, and I also just hate the feeling of being full. I've learned that about myself as I've gotten it. Like the feeling of being full is so unappealing that I don't,
the physical sensation.
Yeah, it's almost like in the way my body feels, it's like I've gotten hit by a truck. And so I've never, taken down a pizza. Like I would say it's relatively tame, and mostly because that feeling is just like something I try to avoid. Like even on Thanksgiving, I'll like check myself. I'm like, okay, am I about to get there? Because if I get there, it's going to I'm going to be in a place I don't want to be.
Yeah, I can get to where I have to unbuckle my pants.
Yeah,
like I can get to that level. Yeah, but that's also being like that's every once in a while. Like once a year, I'll do that. But I like that through the process, you were learning what works well for you, what's going to keep you on track. And you made a very good point in that you had to make a decision between what's working really great for right now, or what's going to be worse in the long run. Right.
Yeah.
So some people will be like, no cheat days. I'm never. And I don't like the idea. I don't like saying cheat because it feels like, you're breaking the rules. No, you're an adult. Eat the crap you want. You know what I mean? Like, so it's more like where you just have less restriction.
Right.
But I find when people go for long periods of time with no release of that restriction, they end up binging or something later down the road because they're repressing this need to just be free and do what you want to do. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, before I worked with you and I was at that 185, like there were no cheat days, any of that. Like it was, I could feel it was psychologically really hard. Like I didn't know why, but it was like, but you elucidated the point for me, which was like, you're doing all this working out and your body's just barely recovering with the amount of calories. And I was just like, I felt like it was like teetering. Like I was just like on the verge of, some kind of like breakdown, whether bodily or something. Cause I think my body was just like, hey man, like let's do something different here. So so I knew there had to be a change, and white knuckling it is probably not a good sustainable strategy.
No, it's the worst, dude.
Yeah.
Like you just hold on for dear life, it's just not gonna work. But what about, how did your performance, so the goal was to get stronger, right? For longevity, right? That's the ultimate goal. And what you're talking about is from Peter Attia's book. What is it called?
That's so weird that I read it.
All of a sudden, Outlive.
Outlive. That's right.
Outlive. So Peter Attia's book, Outlive, I would recommend anybody read it. It's not necessarily like a huge page turner, like you're just, but it will, like Brad is saying, it will really shock you how we've placed so much importance on certain things, like diet, organic, this, that. We place so much on that. And somehow exercise has kind of taken a back seat for longevity when it's actually in the reverse seats, right? Like diet is really good for you when you're not doing it really wrong, right? So if you're doing it really wrong, it's really bad for you. If you're doing it pretty good, like pretty good to really good, there's not much movement on the benefits. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like you're not really moving the needle going from, I eat paleo and now I'm eating all organic paleo macrobiotic. Doesn't really move the needle. But exercise almost has no limitation on how good it can be for you. So what Brad is referring to is there are studies that correlate muscle size and strength with longevity. So just the more muscle you can have and strength you can maintain into your later years, the chances of having an injury, falling down the stairs, breaking a limb that's not going to heal well is much lower. Yeah. So that was one of the big reasons why you started with me. So in your experience, what's cool about your experience here is that you had a really live test on whether or not you were getting stronger, because you would go and literally man wrestle in jiu-jitsu, pajama wrestle, men half your age. You and I are in our 40s, and it's a real test of where you are physically when you go up against a 20-year-old and they're not treating you like you're their dad. You know what I mean? Like they're not going easy on you like, oh, it's pops, I'm just going to have fun. No, they're trying to take your head off, So did you notice, like when did you really start noticing a difference?
Well, I got a lot of comments. Like a lot of people were noticing. I mean, I think, it's noticeable when you put on weight, and you put on muscle. And so I was getting a lot of, comments just about the way I looked. And, at the same time, I'm sure you're on the same mission. Like I'm working on my technique. I'm not just working on my strength, but I think what I found is that, yes, I was working on technique, but size and strength, adds a little something to your technique.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Everybody's like, strength doesn't matter. Yeah, when you don't have it. You know what I mean? But when you have it, it matters.
Yeah, and I think what I noticed the most was that I just couldn't get thrown around in the same way.
Mm,
And I could also, control people for a lot longer, to get to submission positions more effectively, um, and more consistently. And again, part of that is technique, but the reality is that I could have a much better technique than somebody, but if they were 35, 40 pounds heavier than me, and correspondingly stronger, I'm going to be I think, at a disadvantage.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
jujitsu is a martial art so that smaller people can compete with larger people. But when the size and strength is so disparate that, they can just crush you, their technique isn't always going to get you all the way there. And admittedly, I'm not a master at jujitsu. I'm sure there are, 125-pound black belts who could take on 300-pound guys.
Sure.
I'm not at that level, and so I found that the
Neither
size.
am I.
Well, I just found that the size and strength made me more effective within jujitsu, and I enjoyed that. Like I really enjoyed being stronger, tougher, more successful in jujitsu. And even though we started working together for longevity, I kind of the way I think about orienting all of my fitness stuff is towards the purpose of jujitsu because it does provide such a fantastic community of people, and I want to be a part of that community for as long as I can. And so I think about the
Yep.
nutrition, the strength training, all of that. Yes, it's to be in jujitsu, but part of jujitsu is the community aspect, which brings the longevity in and of itself. If you read any longevity research, community is
Hmm.
important. Um, and a lot of guys, and myself included, didn't have a whole lot of community outside of work until I started jujitsu. And
Yep.
that's why, when Blake said, "Welcome to the team," I think there was like a halo
Like
effect. I
the
was like,
spirit touched you.
yeah, it was amazing
Let's
because,
freaking go, dude.
yeah. So, I mean, all of that I think made me better in
Yeah.
jujitsu.
But I like the correlate. I like the comparison between, like, not everybody's going to do jujitsu like me and you, of course. Like, and a lot of people who are going to listen to this and be like, what are they talking about? But what jujitsu does for me and for Brad, which I orient a lot of my training around that type of performance as well, not just to be big, but to be effectively strong with what, it's one thing to be able to deadlift 500. It's another thing to be able to put that kind of strength into another person,
Yeah.
or a real world situation, right? So I think what jujitsu does in this situation is it gives you a live testing ground to see if the training is being effective, right? So, and like I have other clients who, like one lady, I'm going to have her on. She's trying really hard not to be on my podcast because she's like, I'm going to do so bad, and I'm like, oh, shut up. We just won't air it if it's not good. Uh, but like, she'll tell me, like, she went to open the screen door and she didn't realize how much stronger she had gotten, and she pulled the screen door off, right?
I
Or like
love
she's
it.
stacking boxes on shelves overhead where she used to have to get her son to come help her do that. Like, real world experience to see that life is actually getting easier, right?
Yeah.
And if everyday tasks are easier, chances are you could probably do those for a lot longer without getting
Yeah.
injured. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, me and Brad are dorking out about jujitsu, but all that's serving is a test ground for real life, you know? And talk to me a little bit about how the community, because obviously what I do, all my stuff is really based around faith and fitness, like everything's really, Bible oriented, church oriented stuff. But that community is a big part of that, right? So tell me just how community in that sense has helped you as well with your fitness.
Well, I mean, it gave me a much deeper purpose for it.
Hmm.
So when I first started, doing jujitsu, I was interested in the martial arts, and then slowly but surely realized people like you, people like Ryan, people like, Matt Ritt, Matt Fike. I mean, people that we all knew and loved when we were in Memphis. They kind of became the people of your life, and
Hmm.
also, and is there are a lot of guys who are in there who are trying to be world champions. They're trying to be UFC fighters. They're trying to have professional careers in mixed martial arts. I'm definitely not, trying to compete with those guys on that plane. But knowing that I was a very small part of helping those guys along their journey was
Mm-hmm.
really meaningful to me. And
Mm-hmm.
it was true in Memphis, and we moved to Chattanooga, and I went to Agogi Combatives. We ended up having two guys who are now in the UFC.
Wow.
Like, really tough guys, incredible fighters, and rolling with them and knowing that, like, okay, I'm part of their training camp. I'm maybe like 1/100th of what their training camp is,
But
because
you're
like,
part of it, dude.
but I'm a part of it. And, helping other guys who are just starting, as I've gone further in my journey and I'm a little bit more experienced, helping them like access that community. I mean, it's just an endless source of purpose.
I
And,
love that.
you know, I just think so many men, especially as they get into their careers, just don't have that outside of their work. Or at least that was my personal experience, and I think that's the experience of a lot of people that I know. So if you can find something, it doesn't need to be jujitsu, but if you can find something where there is that ongoing source of community, and for some people it is faith, it is their church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for me, I've always been very athletically inclined. Like, I was a college athlete, and that was a huge part of my life. And then when I stopped being an athlete the very next year, I had a full-on identity crisis. Like,
Wow.
I've never had depression, but for about 8 months, I was like, I didn't know who I was anymore. And so I think jujitsu and having that community connected to some sort of athletic pursuit just reawakened a part of myself that had been dead for quite a while.
I love that. So, and because I mean, I feel the same. Like, I feel like I'm a part of something. Like, I'm a
Yeah,
part of a team. Even in my jujitsu school, in my church, I feel like I'm a part of a team, and that team is going some direction, and I'm a
yeah,
part of that, right? But then I think the other thing is like, think about it. Some of those guys you're in the company of people who are better than you. You're in the
mhm,
company of people who are pushing you. I mean, dude, I mean, there were guys in Memphis who were going into professional fighters. Those dudes would crush me. So, and I thought because I had a belt that was darker than theirs, that somehow, I was going to do great. Those guys ruined my day, bro. So, but just being in an environment where other people are pushing as well, and
yeah,
I get to, one, see that, I get to be a part of that. Not only do I get better, but I help those with me get better. So the same thing happens on a team. The same thing happens in a church. The same thing happens in your family. We're all, we're pushing, we're a part of this big thing, and we're all pushing each other.
yeah,
So I love that. But I love too that I got to play a role in your being a part of that team, right?
yeah,
Because when you started getting bigger and stronger, fitter, you started bringing more excellence to the mats. You started bringing more excellence, more challenge. You made people around you better. So your fitness actually helped other people as well.
yeah,
So I think that we don't see how things are connected sometimes. We just see like, oh, well, I'm over here doing bench presses and that's what I'm doing. But really, every part of your life is connected. And the more strength you bring to other areas of your life, the better things get, in my
yeah.
opinion, anyway. So, well, I love it, man. What what's your next goal, bro? So you're training on your own now. So I've let you fly to the wind. I'm joking. What's your next goals? Are you just going to keep? Are you competing at all? What's the goal?
So, I mean, right now, I wouldn't say, jujitsu is taking a back seat, and because I'm still trying to do it, 4 to 6 times a week. But um, put aside any competition
Okay.
because a lot of my time is being spent, being a youth coach for my son, who's 9. He's on an all-star baseball team. He's, on a flag football team that I'm the coach for. And so weekends are kind of taken, and that's when most jujitsu competitions are. But I mean, one thing I do envision for the future, I want to do that again. I really enjoyed that. I enjoy competing. I enjoy the atmosphere. And so I think when he gets into middle school, I'm going to re-engage in that. As I shared with you, I definitely want to work with you again because we've never worked together in that context where it's like we're actually preparing for something. Like I would love to do the worlds for IBJJF one day. Like I'm
Yes.
not ready for that right now, but I think I
You're
can
ready.
be, and up both my strength and my skill. And so I just want to be consistent. Like I want to continue progress in terms of my strength and my size. I want to stay like around the weight that I'm at right now, and that those provide daily challenges. And then again, just be a source of positivity and community for my community in jiu-jitsu. And also with my boys, try and set a positive example. And, it's not always clear that they're paying attention to that, but
They're
I'm sure they are.
they are, but it's like out the corner of their eye, and they're taking
Yeah,
it in by osmosis. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
my daughter will all of a sudden she'll say something. I'll be like, "Where did you hear that?" And she's like, "I don't know," because I'm like, it sounds exactly like me, like
Yeah.
that you said that. So are your boys getting into exercise at all yet?
So my 13-year-old, he plays middle school football for the team, and he's also a middle school wrestler. He's been in several jiu-jitsu tournaments. He competed last night, had a wrestling meet, and he and I have a plan actually after wrestling season and before football season to actually start on the strength and fitness
Let's go.
journey. Found out that he eats about as many calories per day as I do, but they're probably not quite as optimized. But his metabolism is just like taking
Yeah,
care of
he's
it.
he's made of rubber bands and magic right now,
That's
dude.
right. That's right. And then my 9-year-old, he plays football and baseball. And he's going to go into wrestling as soon as football season is over. So again, hopefully the example is helping them, but I'm going to work directly with my 13-year-old, probably making sure the form is strong before we put any weight, on the
Yeah,
load. If I can get him squatting and bench pressing and deadlifting without weight, work on plyometrics, explosion, speed, etc. Like that's what we're going to focus on next with him.
dude, that's awesome. Dude, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff fires me up because I'm like, you're gonna take that information and your kid's gonna be a freaking state champ, bro. Let's freaking go. Like,
That'd be awesome.
let's believe for the ultimate, dude. Right?
I do.
So I
I
love
do.
it, Brad. I love it, Brad. Thank you so much for
Hey,
being a
I know
part,
you're
dude.
closing up, but I just want to say, I mean, and I've said this offline too, like you made a huge difference in my life. Not just in the work that we did over the 16 months, but when we were, jujitsu partners back in the day. And so thank you for everything that you did for me. And for the people who have been impacted by, the person I am now, like you're a huge part of that, Adam. So thank you.
Man, thank you, Brad. I appreciate it. At the end of the day, man, the goal is just to help other people, and if we can all get jacked in the process, why not? You know what I mean?
Everything's
Like,
better when you're stronger.
dude, and everything looks better when you can take your shirt off and totally be, and just alpha every dude around you. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's freaking go. Like, there's a guy that does, he and I talk on Instagram, but he's always the alpha dad of the neighborhood.
Okay.
Right? Like he'll do squats in the street, deadlift in the street, and like farmers carry down the road, and it's just
Yeah.
funny. So anyway, Brad, thank you, brother. One day I hope we can do some jujitsu together, and when you're ready to go dominate Masters 47 with me, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're gonna be like Masters level. I don't know what we are, like Masters 4
Masters
right now,
10.
aren't we? Masters 10. They're going to be like, yeah, the geriatric group, here we come. But dude, if I can do it that long, I will, right? So,
Yeah,
but thank you for trusting me with the process, and I can't wait to work with you again, brother.
absolutely. All right, buddy.
Take care.